My stepsister married my ex-fiance after sleeping with him. 5 years gone by, and my family thinks I need to get over it. Let me take you back to when I was 23, a young woman with stars in my eyes and a heart full of hopes and dreams for the future. I was engaged to Ryan, a man who, at 32, seemed to have his life together and was ready to embark on this journey called marriage with me. We'd met through mutual friends, and from the very start, it felt like one of those fairy tale romances. We go on long walks in the park, sharing ice creams and our deepest secrets. Our evenings were often spent cuddled up on the couch, watching old movies and planning our future home, down to the color of the curtains. But little did I know, a storm was brewing just beneath the seemingly calm surface. My stepsister Kelly, who was 24 at the time, entered the picture with a plea that would shatter my world. One evening, as I was getting ready for a date with Ryan, she came into my room, her eyes red and swollen. She begged me to leave Ryan, confessing in a choked voice that they were deeply in love. She said Ryan was too much of a coward to break it off with me because he didn't want to hurt my feelings or cause a rift in my family. I was stunned. It was like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The room started to spin, and I had to sit down on the edge of the bed to steady myself. When I confronted Ryan, he looked me straight in the eye and denied it all. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of something in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. He claimed Kelly had been throwing herself at him for ages, and he'd kept quiet to protect our relationship. He pleaded with me not to believe her, and like a lovesick fool, I wanted to trust him. So, we carried on as if nothing had happened. We still went on our dates, still talked about our future, but now there was a nagging doubt in the back of my mind. But Kelly didn't give up. She grew bitter and resentful, and her words became like poisoned arrows. Whenever we were in the same room, she'd give me these looks, full of scorn and pity. And then, when we were alone, she'd let loose. She'd constantly snipe at me, saying I was so desperate for love that I was forcing a man who didn't love me to marry me. Her comments chipped away at my self-esteem. Day by day, I started to question myself. Was I really that needy? Was I blind to the truth? Then, 1 month later, she sent me a video that shattered my world into a million pieces. It was them, in my bed, in the most intimate act. I remember clicking on the file, not knowing what to expect, and then being hit with a wave of nausea and disbelief. Along with it came screenshots of their conversations. Ryan telling her he loved her, wishing she was the one he was marrying, complaining that I was standing in the way of their happiness. I was devastated. Anger boiled inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out at the world. Thankfully, my best friend was my rock. She came over as soon as I called her, her arms open wide. She held me as I sobbed uncontrollably, and then, when I was ready, she talked sense into me. She convinced me not to go on a rampage and instead to make a quiet exit. So, when Ryan was at work the following week, I packed my bags. I went through our things, taking only what was truly mine. I reached out to my dad and stepmom, asking if I could stay with them for a while. I carefully sorted out our joint account, taking back the money I'd put in for the wedding and transferring the rest to Ryan before closing it. Once I was settled at my dad's, I sent those damning screenshots to every relative on both sides. I wanted them to see the truth, to know what had been done to me. Ryan tried to win me back numerous times. He'd send flowers, leave voicemails full of apologies and promises. But when I found out he'd proposed to Kelly with the same ring he'd given me, the one I'd left behind in my haste to leave, I couldn't take it anymore. I blocked him, and that was the end of that chapter. But little did I know, the aftershocks of this betrayal would continue to haunt me for years to come. After that heart-wrenching breakup, life felt like a never-ending uphill battle. Kelly, who was once my stepsister in name and someone I'd shared countless family dinners with, became a stranger, a source of pain I couldn't escape. She was now married to Ryan, the man who had promised me a lifetime of love. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and my family's reaction only made it worse. You see, I have another stepsister, who we'll call Lisa, and a stepbrother, Mark. They were from my mom's second marriage. And then there was my half-sister, Emily. When Kelly and Ryan got married, they all attended the wedding. It was like a slap in the face. I couldn't understand how they could support the two people who had ripped my heart out. Whenever I tried to voice my hurt, they'd just shrug it off. Their family, they'd say, as if that excused everything. But what about me? Didn't I matter? I was left feeling like an outsider in my own family. So, I made a choice. I distanced myself. I didn't attend a single holiday gathering with my mom's side. My older biological brother and sister, who had seen me go through the ringer, did the same. We found comfort in each other's company, away from the reminders of the betrayal. Years passed, and I slowly started to piece my life back together. I focused on my career, met new friends, and eventually, I found love again. My boyfriend, who would soon become my husband, was everything Ryan wasn't. He was kind, attentive, and made me feel like I was the most precious thing in the world. When New Year's Day rolled around, he proposed. It was a magical moment, filled with tears of joy and promises of a new beginning. We decided to have a small engagement party, just to celebrate with our closest loved ones. I invited my mom and half-sister, hoping they'd share in my happiness, but they never showed up. Later, I found out it was because I was excluding half of our family. I was furious. I hadn't invited my stepdad or the other step-siblings because of how they'd treated me when Kelly and Ryan's affair came to light. They had been so cruel, blaming me for getting in the way of what they called true love. They made me out to be some sort of vindictive Disney villain for being angry with them. As we started planning our wedding, life threw us another curveball. In late February, my husband suggested we postpone until next year. The threat of COVID was looming, and he was worried we'd have to cancel or reschedule at the last minute. I agreed, reluctantly. But then, a month before our original wedding date, I found out I was pregnant. We decided to have a courthouse wedding on that date, with the plan to hold the big ceremony next year. Only my dad's side of the family knew about both the pregnancy and the wedding. It was a small, intimate affair, filled with love and hope for the future. My stepmom, who had been a pillar of support throughout this tumultuous time, has a passion for knitting. When she found out I was pregnant, she was over the moon. She immediately got to work, creating the most adorable baby clothes and blankets. Her hands moved with love and care, each stitch a testament to her excitement for the new arrival. One day, she decided to share her creations on Facebook. She posted pictures of the tiny knitted booties, the soft pastel-colored blankets, and the little hats with cute pom-poms. Along with the photos, she wrote a heartfelt caption expressing how thrilled she was to be welcoming another grandchild into the family soon. And, of course, she tagged me in the post. I had absolutely no issue with it. In fact, it warmed my heart to see her so happy and involved. But it seems that in this family, nothing can be simple. An hour after the post went up, my phone rang. It was my mom. From the moment I answered, I could tell she was angry. "Are you pregnant?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I was taken aback. I hadn't told her, but it wasn't as if I'd been deliberately hiding it. She had never shown much interest in my life or my relationship. Whenever we talked, it was always about her problems or the latest gossip in her circle. So, I just never brought it up. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. But that wasn't enough for her. She launched into a tirade about how I couldn't believe I hadn't told her that she was finally going to be a grandmother, and how hurt she was. I listened in silence, my anger growing with each passing second. Since that call, she has invited me and my husband over to her house multiple times. Each time I declined. The thought of going there, of having to face Kelly and Ryan, was too much to bear. It was like she didn't understand the pain I was still in, the betrayal that still haunted me. Then my stepdad, who I had barely spoken to in 5 years, reached out. His text message was filled with excitement about meeting the baby and my husband. It felt so insincere. After all the years of him taking Kelly and Ryan's side, of blaming me for the mess, this sudden change of heart was hard to swallow. And Kelly herself even reached out to my husband to congratulate us. I was furious. How dare she act as if nothing had happened? The next time my mom and stepdad called me, I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation any longer. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and answered the phone. My mom started off with her usual complaints, asking why I was being so difficult and why I wouldn't come over. I let her finish, and then I unleashed all the pent-up anger and hurt that had been building inside me for years. I told her, my voice shaking with emotion, that I didn't want them to keep inviting me over when they knew full well that if I came, I'd be forced to see Kelly and Ryan. I reminded her of that fateful day when Kelly begged me to leave Ryan, and how they'd all turned a blind eye to my pain when the two got married. I told her how their dismissive attitude had made me feel invisible, like my feelings didn't matter. "You all just shrugged it off as if what they did to me was nothing," I said. I was going through the worst betrayal of my life, and you left me out to rot. And now you expect me to just forget it all and act like everything is okay." My stepdad jumped in, his tone defensive. He claimed I was being petty for holding on to something that happened 5 years ago. He spouted some nonsense about how love makes people do crazy things, and that I should understand since I found happiness with my husband. "Kelly and Ryan are happy together," he said. "You should be happy for them the way they're happy for you and your husband." But I knew the truth. My sister had told me in confidence that Kelly and Ryan were on the verge of divorce. They argued constantly, and my mom would often complain to her about their fights. My siblings all hated Ryan, but pretended to like him for Kelly's sake. It was all a facade, and I was sick of it. I didn't hold back. I told them I wasn't even sure I wanted people like them in my child's life. The thought of them being around my baby, after how they treated me, made me sick to my stomach. My mom started crying hysterically. She kept wailing that I was being cruel and that I couldn't deprive her of her first grandchild. But the irony was, she already had 2 granddaughters. My sister had adopted 2 girls years ago, and my mom had barely made an effort to bond with them. It was clear that she only cared about this new baby because it was related to her by blood. I couldn't take it anymore. The anger and sadness were overwhelming. I ended up hanging up the phone because I didn't want them to hear me break down. I didn't want them to think they had the power to make me cry. Since that explosive phone call, my life has been turned upside down all over again. The calls and texts from my mom's side of the family have been nonstop. It's like a never-ending barrage of guilt trips and pleas for forgiveness. My phone buzzes constantly, each notification a reminder of the chaos that still surrounds me. Messages from my stepdad trying to reason with me, saying I'm overreacting and that I need to let bygones be bygones. Texts from my stepsisters, some half-hearted apologies mixed with blame, as if I'm the one who caused all this turmoil. And my mom, her messages are a jumbled mess of crying emojis and demands to see me and the baby. It's gotten to the point where my husband and I had to switch phones. He's been screening my messages for me, trying to protect me from the emotional onslaught. I just can't bear to read them anymore. Every word feels like a dagger, reopening the old wounds that had barely started to heal. I find myself torn. Part of me wants to cut them all off completely, to block their numbers, unfriend them on social media, and pretend they don't exist. It would be so easy to just walk away and start fresh, without the constant reminders of the past. But another part of me still clings to the hope that things could be different, that maybe one day they'll truly understand the depth of the pain they caused me. I think back to the good times we had as a family, the holidays spent laughing around the dinner table, the shared secrets and inside jokes. It's hard to reconcile those memories with the people they've become. How could they be so blind to my hurt? My husband has been my rock throughout all of this. He holds me when I cry, listens to me rant and rave, and tells me that whatever I decide, he'll support me. But even he can't shield me from the loneliness I feel sometimes. I look at him and our growing baby bump, and I know I have so much to be thankful for. But the ache in my heart for the family I lost won't go away. I've started seeing a therapist. It's a small step towards healing, but it's something. In those quiet sessions, I pour out my heart, talking about the betrayal, the anger, and the confusion. The therapist helps me see that I can't control how my family reacts, but I can control how I respond. For now, I'm in a stalemate. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive and forget. I don't know if my family will ever truly understand. But I do know that I have to put myself and my growing family first. And as I place my hand on my belly, I make a silent promise to protect my child from ever experiencing the kind of pain I've been through.